The call came at 4:47 a.m. Danish time. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen was jolted awake by her security detail, not unusual during international crises, but the panic in their voices was something she'd never heard before. "Ma'am, you need to see this immediately. Trump just posted something about Greenland." She grabbed her secure tablet, still half asleep, expecting another one of Trump's typical social media rants. Instead, she found herself staring at an image that made her blood freeze. The American flag superimposed over Greenland with a single-word caption that would trigger the biggest crisis in NATO's 77-year history. Soon. Posted by Katie Miller, wife of Trump's deputy chief of staff, not some random social media user, not an unofficial account, the wife of one of Trump's most influential advisors, posting what amounted to a digital annexation notice. And this was less than 24 hours after American forces had kidnapped the president of Venezuela. I've been studying geopolitical crises for 30 years. I've watched the Soviet Union collapse, witnessed 9/11s reshape American foreign policy, and analyzed the rise of China as it challenged Western dominance. But I've never seen anything like what happened next. A sitting prime minister of a NATO ally openly stating that her country was in full crisis mode because the United States was threatening to invade. Denmark, a founding member of NATO, was preparing for war against its own alliance. The post that shattered an alliance. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening in Copenhagen as Danish intelligence analysts were frantically trying to understand if Katie Miller's post represented official U.S. policy or just incredibly poor judgment. Denmark isn't Venezuela. This isn't some distant authoritarian regime that Trump could label as illegitimate. Denmark is America's ally. They fought alongside American forces in Afghanistan, Iraq, and every major NATO operation for the past 2 decades. Danish special forces have bled and died supporting American strategic objectives around the world. And now the wife of Trump's closest advisor was posting invasion imagery. Within 3 hours of Miller's post, Danish military intelligence had activated emergency protocols I didn't even know existed. According to my sources, people who risked their careers by talking to me, Denmark's military leadership convened the first Emergency Defense Council meeting since the Soviet Union collapsed. The question on the table wasn't whether Trump was serious about taking Greenland. After Venezuela, everyone knew he was serious. The question was whether Denmark should prepare to resist or prepare to surrender. A NATO ally was debating whether to fight the United States. Prime Minister Frederiksen's response when it came 12 hours later was unprecedented in the history of the Atlantic Alliance. If the United States decides to militarily attack another NATO country, then everything would stop. That includes NATO and therefore post-World War II security. Read that again. The Prime Minister of Denmark just announced that American aggression against Greenland would end NATO. Not strain NATO, not complicate NATO, end NATO. She was essentially declaring that Trump could have Greenland or he could have the Western Alliance, but he couldn't have both. The geography that makes Greenland irresistible. Here's why Trump isn't going to back down and why this crisis is going to get worse before it gets better. Greenland isn't just a big ice cube with strategic positioning, though its location between North America and Europe makes it perhaps the most strategically valuable territory on Earth. Greenland sits on top of mineral resources that are essential for every piece of advanced military technology the United States produces. Rare earth minerals, critical for every satellite, every guided missile, every advanced aircraft system in the American military arsenal. Currently, 70% of these minerals come from China, America's primary strategic rival. Trump is facing the possibility of Chinese control over American military supply chains. But Greenland has something even more valuable than rare earth deposits, proximity to America combined with Western governance. Every major rare earth mining operation requires massive infrastructure investment, environmental compliance, and political stability that can guarantee long-term contracts. You can't build a rare earth extraction operation in some unstable African country and expect it to function for the decades required to justify the investment. You need a stable government, reliable legal systems, and geographic access that allows you to transport materials to where they're needed. Greenland, under Danish sovereignty, offers all of that plus location that makes it essentially part of North America from a logistical perspective. From Trump's perspective, this isn't conquest. It's consolidation of North American resources under North American control. The Venezuelan precedent, why Denmark, can't ignore the threat. 3 weeks ago, if Trump had posted about taking Greenland, European leaders would have rolled their eyes and issued diplomatic statements about respecting territorial integrity, standard political theater that everyone could safely ignore. Then Venezuela happened. Suddenly, Trump's threats weren't just rhetoric, they were operational previews. The methodology that worked in Caracas could work in Nuuk, Greenland's capital. Identify a strategic objective, rare earth minerals instead of oil. Find a legal justification, national security instead of drug trafficking. Position military assets under cover of routine operations, Arctic exercises instead of anti-drug patrols. Execute a precision strike designed to control territory rather than eliminate leadership. The only question was whether Trump would risk Article 5 for rare earth access. Danish defense analysts, people whose job it is to think about worst-case scenarios, started running war games that 6 months ago would have been considered insane. What if American special forces seized key mining areas in Greenland? What if American naval forces blockaded Danish supply ships? What if Trump simply declared Greenland's resources to be under American protection and dared Denmark to do something about it? Every scenario ended the same way. Denmark couldn't stop the United States and NATO couldn't help them. The impossible math of Article 5. Here's the fundamental problem that's tearing NATO apart from the inside. Article 5, the Mutual Defense Clause that supposedly guarantees collective security, was never designed to handle an attack by the alliance's own dominant member. Article 5 states that an attack against one NATO member shall be considered an attack against all. Beautiful language. Inspiring principle. Completely meaningless when the attacker is the United States. Think about the operational reality. If American forces moved against Greenland, which NATO countries would actually fight the United States, Britain, which depends on American intelligence sharing for basic national security, France, which relies on American military technology for its nuclear deterrent, Germany, which has been essentially demilitarized for decades and couldn't project meaningful force if it wanted to. The mutual defense guarantee only works when all members are capable of mutual defense. The United States provides 70% of NATO's military capability. American forces protect European shipping lanes, American intelligence systems monitor European threats, and American nuclear weapons provide the ultimate security guarantee that allows European countries to maintain minimal defense budgets. You can't invoke Article 5 against the country that IAS Article 5. Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen understood this perfectly when she declared that American aggression would end NATO. She wasn't threatening to leave the alliance. She was acknowledging that the alliance would cease to exist the moment its dominant member attacked another member. NATO would die not from external pressure, but from internal contradiction. The Copenhagen panic inside Denmark's crisis response. I've been in touch with sources inside the Danish government who describe a level of panic I've never witnessed in a Western democracy. This isn't the controlled concern of diplomats managing a routine international dispute. This is the existential terror of a small country realizing that its most powerful ally has become its most dangerous threat. Within 48 hours of the Miller Post, Denmark had activated emergency protocols that hadn't been used since World War II. Military intelligence analysts were working around the clock to assess American force positioning in the Arctic. Diplomatic staff were reaching out to every major European capital trying to build some kind of collective response. But the math was terrifying. Denmark has a population of 5.8 million people. Their entire military consists of roughly 15,000 active personnel. They have no nuclear weapons, limited air defense capabilities, and a navy designed for coastal patrol rather than major combat operations. The United States has 1.3 million active military personnel, global logistics capabilities that can position overwhelming force anywhere on Earth within days, and nuclear weapons that make any conventional resistance futile. Denmark couldn't defend Greenland against American aggression any more than Venezuela could defend Caracas. But here's what made the crisis even worse. Greenland itself was split on the question of Danish versus American control. Greenland has been pushing for independence from Denmark for years. The territory has significant autonomy, but ultimate sovereignty still rests in Copenhagen. Many Greenlanders see American interest and American investment as potentially more beneficial than continued Danish control. Denmark was facing the possibility of fighting the United States to maintain control over a territory that might not want Danish protection. The European fracture when allies abandon allies. What happened next revealed the fundamental weakness of European unity when confronted with American pressure. 7 European leaders, including Emmanuel Macron, Friedrich Merz, and Keir Starmer, issued a joint statement declaring that Greenland belongs to its people and that only Denmark and Greenland could decide the territory's future. Strong language. Inspiring rhetoric. Absolutely zero commitment to actually defend Denmark. Notice what they didn't say. They didn't invoke Article 5. They didn't threaten economic retaliation against the United States. They didn't even criticize Trump by name. They issued a diplomatic statement that essentially acknowledged Danish sovereignty while carefully avoiding any promise to defend it. Europe was abandoning Denmark in real time. Behind the scenes, according to diplomatic sources who spoke to me on condition of anonymity, European capitals were frantically trying to distance themselves from what they saw as a Danish problem that could drag them into a confrontation with the United States. Germany, which depends on American military protection against Russian threats, quietly let it be known that they would not support military resistance to American actions in Greenland. Britain, with its special relationship with the United States, refused to even comment on the crisis beyond generic statements about international law. France suggested that Denmark should negotiate with the United States rather than rely on NATO protection. By the end of the week, Denmark stood essentially alone against American pressure. Their NATO allies had written them off as an acceptable sacrifice to maintain their own relationships with Washington. The solidarity that supposedly defined the Western alliance evaporated the moment it was tested. The strategic logic of American expansion. From a purely geopolitical perspective, setting aside questions of international law, alliance obligations, or moral considerations, Trump's Greenland gambit makes perfect strategic sense. America faces a fundamental challenge that will define the next 50 years of global competition, technological dependence on Chinese supply chains. Every advanced weapons system, every satellite, every piece of military hardware that maintains American technological superiority requires materials that China currently controls. America has built its military dominance on a foundation controlled by its primary rival. Greenland offers the possibility of breaking that dependence entirely, not just alternative sources of critical materials, but sources located within what America considers its natural sphere of influence. Materials that could be extracted, processed, and delivered to American defense contractors without any possibility of Chinese interference. Strategic independence through geographic control. But there's an even deeper logic at work here, the demonstration effect of Venezuelan success. Trump has proven that America can simply take what it needs from smaller countries without meaningful international resistance. The precedent has been established. The methodology has been tested. The international community has demonstrated its inability to prevent American resource acquisition through military force. Why negotiate when you can simply take? From Trump's perspective, Greenland isn't really Danish territory. It's temporarily mismanaged North American resources under the nominal control of a European microstate that lacks the capability to develop or defend them effectively. Denmark is holding American strategic materials hostage to Danish political sensibilities. The point of no return. As I write this, Trump has announced that he'll talk about Greenland in 20 days, not negotiate, not discuss, talk about. The phrasing is significant. Trump isn't opening diplomatic negotiations with Denmark about Greenland's future. He's announcing a timeline for American decision-making about Greenland's future. Denmark isn't being consulted. Denmark is being informed. Danish intelligence analysts understand exactly what this means. Trump is giving them 20 days to work out some face-saving arrangement that transfers effective control of Greenland to the United States, or he's going to impose a solution that Denmark won't like. The Venezuelan model provides the template. American forces will identify some legal justification, perhaps Danish inability to defend Greenland against Russian or Chinese threats, and will move to establish protective control over critical mining areas. Denmark will be presented with a choice between military resistance and diplomatic surrender. Given the math of American military superiority, it's not really a choice at all. The NATO death spiral. Here's what's going to happen next and why it represents the end of the Atlantic Alliance as we've known it for nearly 8 decades. Denmark cannot defend Greenland against American action. Their allies cannot help them defend Greenland against American action, but they also cannot be seen to simply hand over NATO territory to American demands without resistance. They're trapped between impossibility and humiliation. If Denmark resists, they lose Greenland and potentially face broader American retaliation that could destroy their economy and their security. If Denmark surrenders, they establish the precedent that American pressure can override NATO sovereignty whenever the United States decides it needs something. Either outcome destroys NATO's credibility. Other alliance members understand this perfectly, which is why European capitals are already preparing for a post-NATO security environment where they cannot rely on American protection and cannot trust American restraint. France has quietly begun discussions with Germany about independent European defense capabilities. Britain is reconsidering its military relationship with the United States. Even traditional American allies like Norway and the Netherlands are developing contingency plans for managing their relationships with an America that views Allied territory as potentially subject to American control. NATO is dying from within. The cliffhanger that changes everything. 20 days. That's the timeline Trump has given Denmark to accept the unacceptable, the effective loss of Greenland to American control. But Denmark isn't the real target here. Greenland isn't the final objective. This is about establishing the precedent that American strategic needs override international law, alliance obligations, and territorial sovereignty. If Trump can take Greenland from a NATO ally without meaningful resistance, he can take anything from anyone. The rare earth deposits of Afghanistan, the lithium reserves of Bolivia, the copper mines of Chile, the oil fields of any country that doesn't cooperate with American strategic objectives. He's not building an empire, he's demanding tribute. The Venezuelan operation proved that American military force can reach anywhere and extract any leadership. The Greenland crisis is proving that even American allies have no protection against American pressure. What comes next will determine whether we're witnessing the birth of an American empire that openly controls global resources or the collapse of the international system that has prevented World War III for the past 8 decades. 20 days to choose between war and surrender, 20 days to decide whether NATO has any meaning, 20 days to determine whether small countries have any protection against American appetite. Denmark's impossible choice will become every country's impossible choice. The countdown has begun.